Cambridge 105 Radio.
I've got Melanie Wicklen on the line from Age UK, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough to speak about how they've been coping during the pandemic and how you may be able to help them. Hi Melanie, thank you so much for joining me. Firstly, tell us a little bit about your role at Age UK.
Hi, yes, I'm Melanie Wicklen. I'm Chief Executive for Age UK, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. So I lead the organisation across our county, and we are an independent charity which forms part of the brand partnership of Age UK's, of which there are 130 plus independent Age UK charities. So we all have our own board of trustees. And I lead the organisation of around 150 staff and 600 volunteers. So we have a lot of people supporting the organisation.
And when did you join Age UK?
I joined Age UK in September 2008, so quite some time ago. I started working on a lottery funded healthy eating programme for older people to enjoy food and understand the importance of eating well, but also to tackle the issues which still surround us today around isolation and how eating alone, for example, can be quite difficult, and to know how to actually portion size and have the initiative to actually want to cook. So really, a lot of what I learned and concentrated on in those early days is still carried through with us today, because a lot of our efforts are around tackling isolation and loneliness.
Absolutely. You mentioned about the reasons that Age UK was set up originally, and it seems like now more than ever, those principles that Age UK were founded on are so much more important than they've ever been.
Yeah, there's certainly been, since the beginning of the pandemic, a much greater recognition from society of the needs of older people within society, and also the important part that older people can play within society. I must admit, for the 12 years that I've been with the organisation, it's the first time that I've really seen, although I wish it had been the case, but it's the first time that I've really seen older people being at the forefront of people's thoughts. I mean, at the end of the day, we are working with and supporting the most vulnerable cohort in society at the moment, and we try to move away from using the term vulnerable because it can be somewhat patronising, but when we talk about vulnerable at the moment, we mean there's a sheer vulnerability with the virus and the detrimental impact that can have on people's lives, and unfortunately the older people are, or those with underlying health conditions, they are more at risk of contracting it and becoming more ill, and sadly we have seen a number of older people pass away because of it.
Okay, and how much of that has been the isolation aspect of it?
Isolation is a growing issue pre-COVID. It always has been, but I think society has changed so much that we don't live so close to our families. They probably even live in different countries, where historically you would have seen a neighbourhood with bungalows for older people, let's say. That's changing too as well, and perhaps families are moving in and they're busy, and therefore neighbours don't always have the time to spend and give to in a volunteering sense to their neighbours and older people in the communities. So COVID has really highlighted that, and actually it feels like we've had a bit of a U-turn back to how things used to be. A lot of people aren't able to work because they're furloughed, or they're perhaps homeschooling their children, or they're unwell themselves, and we've seen a huge positivity in society, and that people want to give and they want to support those people in society who are more susceptible to the lasting impact of COVID. So whilst COVID has been extremely negative for society, there have been some legacies to come out of this, and we have seen positive signs of people wanting to help each other more, and it's worth noting that a number of our volunteers who have come forward during the pandemic are actually themselves needing to shield or isolate because of their vulnerability to the virus. And actually, they've given their time by making regular calls to others in similar situations. So actually, a vast number of our volunteers are themselves considered, in age terms, older people.
Okay. I imagine the amount of inquiries you had massively increased after people realised they had to shield for so many months. If somebody doesn't know of you or doesn't know about you, how can you expect an elderly person to log on to Google? If you haven't got access to the internet or you don't have direct access to those things, how are people getting your help?
Yeah, another very positive outcome of the pandemic is that we have seen a great deal of collaboration across sectors. So the local authorities and the voluntary sectors and health, the NHS, etc., have really pulled together and bounced off each other, knowing that we can work. There is no competition. We can work really well together. So I fully appreciate that not everybody, in fact, a large proportion of people don't have access to the internet. But everybody over considered an older person have been written to by their local authority. And because we're working so closely together, there are details on such letters of how to make contact with the COVID hubs that the local authorities are delivering. And local authorities then have access to a knowledge of where support networks and provisions are in place. And that might be small community groups who've set up a provision to support their local community, or it could be the likes of charities such as ours. And by working collaboratively, yes, we are in no doubt that there are people who are not aware of what we can offer, but we would like to think that there are sufficient ways of accessing that support through the local authority. And we like to think that more people are more well informed due to the pandemic, but there will always be people who we are not reaching, and we try our utmost to do that. And I think, you know, coming on the radio and hopefully people hearing about the support that's available can actually be a great way of spreading the word of support being available to them.
What's the biggest obstacle you've come across during the pandemic?
The biggest obstacle is, I think, the challenges around having to redeploy and change the way that we deliver services overnight. That has been the case in the last 9 months. So, for example, we have been advised that we're going into lockdown the day after the announcement. That significantly impacts on the way that we deliver services, the way that we can allow our staff and volunteers to travel through the county. If you think back to before Christmas, we had parts of Cambridgeshire, including Cambridge itself, were in tier 3, but tier 4, which was Peterborough, was obviously they were close to lockdown themselves, and we were very clear that we couldn't allow staff unless it was absolutely essential to travel across the tiers, because we don't want to be responsible for spreading the virus. So we had to react very, very quickly. And also, as a result of those lockdowns and those tier implications, you know, we have had to suspend certain services, those being day services and friendship clubs, and that has a horrific outcome for the older people who used to attend. It may have been their only outing for the week, or their only hot meal that they received, and you know, we have had to find ways to transition those services so that we still offer something to those people, so they still receive a welfare call or a doorstep visit if necessary, to have that human contact and know that we are here should there be any needs for support highlighted.
How do you think people in the vulnerable groups have coped with that balance between quality of life and quantity of life? So whilst they could isolate and have quantity of life, they may not have quality of life.
It's not the first time I've been asked that question, and it's a really, really difficult one to answer, because everybody has a choice in life, but everybody also looks at life differently. And you know, if somebody is particularly unwell and they have been denied visits or seeing their family, I mean, so many people in care homes are facing this at the moment and have been for quite some time. It's really difficult. And I think Christmas was a great example of that. We had the opportunity to get together for one day, but many chose not to take that opportunity because they didn't want to risk catching the virus. Others, on the other hand, did choose to come together, and I think we're seeing the outcome of that now with the high number of cases and unfortunately the high number of deaths. But the only way that it is safe to get together is to do that in a safe, COVID secure way. And of course, we're not even allowed to do that now. The only thing we can do is walk outside with a friend or a family member for a short while near to our home. But it's really, really difficult because without being too graphic, the death that many people will have experienced through COVID is horrendous, and that's a choice that we're all, or a risk that we're all taking by mixing. And I think it's quite a deep question. But seriously, we work closely with a lot of health and social care colleagues, and this isn't a pleasant experience at all. It's not a peaceful way to go, and it's choosing that, it's making that decision, which is not easy for anybody. But I do believe that if people are at end of life due to COVID, then the staff are supporting them, are making it as comfortable as possible, and it doesn't, it's got to be recognised how difficult it is for our healthcare professionals in supporting so many people finding themselves in that position. But they are doing their very best, and in some cases family members and loved ones are allowed to go and visit them at that stage. But it's a personal choice, and it's very much up to the individual and their family to make that decision.
Sure. One of the stories that I've heard, and I did ask one of the local authorities about this, is whilst you can get home care, you can't get physical care or physical help, in the sense that if you had to change a bed frame or take or remove a mattress from your house, you can't call a family or friend to come around and do that for you. But it's equally something that you can't remove yourself because you may not have the physicality to do that. Are there any provisions out there that can help people who are vulnerable or who are shielded and can't see their families or friends to help with those practical things?
Yeah, there are services, and we provide one of them actually. It's called the Cambridgeshire Handy Person Service. And everything that you've just described is the kind of support that we can offer. What we have to be mindful of is that in order to protect the service user, the person needing that support, and our staff and volunteers, we have to ensure that we are offering what is essential support, because there is no point sending round a staff member because an individual would like something moving because it's aesthetically pleasing, and putting both parties at risk. However, if it's that somebody is particularly unwell and they need a bed moving downstairs, for example, because they can no longer get upstairs, or they need some furniture moving so that a hospital bed can be delivered, it's absolutely essential, and for that reason we would absolutely carry out the work. And the same applies to things such as grab rails and key safes. If they're essential, if they're going to prevent a fall or allow a carer to come into the property, it's essential, and we're delivering that kind of support on a daily basis.
How can people apply for that help?
People can apply for that help by contacting our services direct, either on the phone or by email, or on finding the details on our website. The telephone number is 0300 666 9860. And for those who are computer literate, then if you just go on to the search engine and search Age UK, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, you will find us. It's important to highlight that you must put Cambridgeshire and Peterborough in, otherwise you won't be able to access our independent website. But the other thing to highlight is that we are very busy at the moment, but we don't like to turn anybody away, and we are prioritising. So please, if your phone call isn't answered, please do leave a message. Don't be afraid to leave a message, because the team are working lots of hours to support people who are most in need, and we will get back to you as soon as possible.
And can a family member call on behalf of their loved one?
Yep, they absolutely can. A family member can call on behalf of a loved one, either to just gain some information or seek some support with a decision that potentially needs making. But then if that results in a referral and details of an older person being given across, then we do need to seek permission of the older person. But if a family member rings and says, I've got permission, then that's absolutely fine. We can take the referral. It's no problem at all.
Okay. And going forward, obviously this is going to be going on for a lot longer than we probably originally thought so. What support do you need from the general public?
At the moment, the type of support we need is to support our telephone befriending primarily, because a number of people are now isolated as a result of COVID. So these are new people to our services, not those who were receiving volunteer visits in the past. These are new people, and we do have a little bit of a waiting list for that service because it's growing. You know, we've carried on from March to now, and I think there would have been an expectation in the summer that we would have come to the end of delivering this type of support. But actually it's growing, because not only do we have a pandemic, but it's the winter, and there's less daylight hours, and people are feeling particularly isolated. So we could always do with people to make friendship calls, and it works both ways. It's beneficial to both parties. So to absolutely do with volunteers to support us with that. And then additionally, we could really do with some further support to help with our shopping collection service. We offer a shopping service to people for up to 6 weeks. We can offer to collect up to 25 items at a time, essential items that people really need. And we help people to then seek longer term measures to help them collect their groceries. But we don't have that much support in the Cambridge area at the moment for that service in terms of volunteers, and for that reason we don't highlight the service that much. It's particularly busy in Peterborough, but in Cambridge it's not, and we would like to expand that. So if people are feeling confident that they would be able to do shopping and deliver it, we'd be grateful. And obviously we provide the relevant PPE so that they are safe in doing that piece of work for us. And we do ask people to undertake a DBS check and provide references as well.
Perfect. Well, Melanie, I wish you a lot of luck, and hope that you'll pull through this, and all of those people that you support. But thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you. And can I just add that I have been with the organisation a long time, but I am so particularly proud of our staff and volunteers, the way that they have shown flexibility and pulled together in what are not just tough times for service users, but also for them. And we really have become one big family, and without that commitment we wouldn't have been able to achieve what we have.
Cambridge 105